Today is Wednesday, October the 29th, 2003, and I'm interviewing Mr. Melburne D. McLendon. My name is H.T. Macklin, and I live here in Atlanta. Mr. McLendon was born on April the 21st, 1921, and a guest is here in the room with us, Mr. F.C. Chandler, a friend of Mr. McLendon's from Army days in World War II. We're glad to have him. Tell me about your early life a little bit, Mr. McLendon. You had 4 brothers.
No, I had 5 brothers.
5 brothers.
One was not old enough to go in. He went in later.
I see. What
had,
branches of the services were they in?
well, the one just older than I was in the Coast Guard. He was in the Coast Guard before the war started and was fighting German U-boats before we got in the war. He stayed in about, I don't know, 8 or 9 years, I guess, after the war. He got out pretty soon after the war was over. 2 were in the Seabees. Both of those were in the 2 older ones were in the Pacific. And my younger brother was flying a Grumman Hellcat between the Admiralties and Guadalcanal, and had engine trouble, went down, and was never returned.
Did all of you grow up here in Atlanta?
We did, yes. I grew up in poverty, and went through the what not recession, but the what?
Depression?
The Depression. No, thank you. Sometimes words just don't come to me. And I made up my mind that I was going to do something better than I was going to be a little better than that. And I wrote off to all the colleges all over the country, sending me catalogs, and I'd look at them and drool. But I didn't get to go at that time. I had 10 hours of college before I went in service at LSU, Lucky Street University, in Atlanta, Georgia. Do you remember that, the University System of Georgia Night School? And then when I came back, I was all registered and ready to, I registered for school before I got out of service. And
well, did you join the Army, or were you drafted?
Oh, I volunteered. I think we all did.
All
I think, yeah.
Why did you pick the Army?
Well, I picked the Army Air Corps.
Air Corps.
I wanted to go into cadets, and I did. But my reasoning probably was not very brilliant. But I thought, well, if I go up in the air and I get shot down, it'll kill me, and I won't be maimed for life. And I'll tell you another story about that a little later. And so that was one of my reasons for going in the Army Air Corps.
Did you really want to fly too?
Oh, I did. Yes, I did. I soloed, but my instructor swore that I stalled the plane at 50 feet and fell straight into the runway, and he washed me out. I don't know that it was 50 feet, but it was pretty high, and my depth, I didn't know for years what was wrong with me, but it was depth perception. And even to this day, I couldn't play baseball, because I couldn't tell where that ball was going. Try to catch a fly ball, man, it was just impossible for me. But anyhow.
What were your first few days like when you got into the Air Corps?
Well, I went from Atlanta to Nashville to a classification center. I had been working out. I'd built my body to where it was just so tight and strong and everything. And just before I left home, I had a terrible, terrible cold and sinus infection. And I lost weight. I was not able to do it after I got to Nashville. It rains there all the time. It rains all the time in Nashville. And we tracked mud into the barracks, and the dust was flying, and it was pretty miserable. But we had fun nevertheless. We was about 10 or 15 boys from the south, and in with about 185 from New York and New Jersey, and we fought the Civil War over and over and over again, and had fun, and I made a lot of friends.
How long were you in your basic training there?
Well, this was not training. This was for classification.
Classification.
And they sent me to ground school for flying at Santa Ana, California. And from there, I went to Thunderbird Field in Arizona for primary. And that one solo was the only shot I had at it. But you know, I think I was sort of glad, because I didn't think it was for me, really.
What were your instructors like at that time?
Well, I liked the fellow. He was very nice. He lost patience pretty easily, but he was all over as soon as it happened, you know. But he would get me on the runway trying to line me up right for takeoff. And he got a little bit upset because I couldn't put it in the right angle. But he was very nice.
What was the instructor's name?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's too many years ago. I cannot remember.
How was it? Did you have fun going through the basic instruction?
Oh yeah, it was. Well, it was fine. I didn't. We had all the ground school work we had to do. You know, I made it past that all right. I was fine, but my flying ability wasn't what it ought to be.
When you finished your basic instruction, what was your first assignment after that?
Now, when you say basic instruction,
well, when you washed out of flight training, then you said you were.
Oh, I went to. Well, I think as I recall it, I was sent. I didn't go directly to gunnery school. They sent me to the desert, the desert in California, where the fire, not where the fire is now, but it is sort of in that area. Oh, I can't think of the name of it. It's near Death Valley, though, and it was hot. It was in the summer.
Gunnery?
I beg your pardon. No, this was just for assignment, and from there I went to gunnery school in Colorado. I was at Lara Field, Buckley Field, and after that I went to St. What is it? Peterson Field. That wouldn't be right, would it? No. I went to Laredo, Texas. Laredo, Texas for gunnery school. That's right.
What type of guns were you trained on?
Caliber 50 machine guns. Yeah. When we were at some point we got on the back end of a truck and with a shotgun and 100 rounds of ammunition, and we rode around the skeet track, and I tell you, by the time I got back shooting 100 rounds from that shotgun, my shoulder was black and blue.
Was this designed to prepare you for 50 caliber training?
Well, it was for tracking. You know,
Tracking.
you had to do a lot of tracking when you the plane's coming at you at an angle or straight in or whatever. You got to know whether to shoot over it or under it or what to make it meet the target.
Well, when you finished your desert training with the shotgun and on the 50 caliber, what was your assignment after that?
We went to we went. I guess I was assigned to B-24, and we had training at Peterson Field. That's where I knew I was at Peterson Field at some time or other. And
where is Peterson Field?
It's in Colorado.
In Colorado.
Yeah, it's about 50 miles, I guess, south of Denver.
Colorado Springs.
Colorado Springs, that's right.
And how many, did you have a number of training missions then on the B-24 in the States?
Oh, we did, yeah. We had a number of night. We thank God we didn't have to fly them at night overseas, but we did fly night missions in the States. And at that time, I was supposed to fly in that ball turret. That ball turret was built for the B-17s, and They put them on the 24s, but we never used them in combat, and I was so thankful for that. You get down in that ball, it's just like flying through the air in a ball. You know, you couldn't even see the plane. You felt completely detached from the plane. It had a good gun on it, good guns and good sights, you know.
And when you finished that training on the B-24 there, did you go overseas then?
I went to the staging for whatever that was. Maybe Hap would remember what staging entailed, but in Kansas City, I believe it was. And then from there, we left to go overseas. We went what they call the southern route. We flew down to Palm Beach, Florida, and stayed there for a few days, and then we headed out for the island of Trinidad, and from Trinidad to Natal and Belim in Brazil, across the Atlantic to Dakar, North Africa, from Dakar to Marrakesh, and Marrakesh around Spain and Portugal, and to England, and we landed at Valley in Wales. The English tell me there is no such place as Valley, but I've heard it used many times, and that's what they told us. As they said, that's where we landed.
Was that your first time to be overseas?
Yes, yes, yes. And that was in April of 1944.
What was it like flying that great distance?
Oh, it was fine. It was no, you know, yeah, we were just kids. We had, what didn't bother us. We had a few drinks when we were in the last place, Marrakesh, I guess it was. Now, radio operator was, I ought not to say this because I better not say that. But anyhow, he had a few drinks in there, and we had to put him in the shower to get him on the plane. But it was no problem. We the pilot, Ken Madden, didn't think he had a 21-year-old navigator on there, and he was just sure he didn't know a damn thing about navigation. So he just complained all the time, "You don't know how to do this. Can you get us over there?" Well, he was on the money everywhere we went. He was a brilliant young man, and he did a great job getting us to England.
So what squadron were you assigned to when you got
Oh, it's either 714 or 715. I cannot remember, but it's a 448th Bomb Group.
And your first mission out of England was what?
We flew just over the coast and dropped bombs, and my second mission was D-Day
Was that in France?
in France. My second mission was D-Day, and we went back and flew over. I saw more planes in the sky that day, and I'm sure you recall it, Hap, more planes in the air, and nobody will ever see that many again. I mean, they were everywhere you looked. There was planes, British and American planes. But
What part of the D-Day area were you to bomb?
Well, I'm sure it was in the Normandy area. That's where the troops were going in. I've been back, and I've seen that, and I must parenthetically say that we got the short end of the stick. The Americans did. The beach they had to go into, they had a cliff just like this. You know, I'm sure. And but that's where we dropped our bombs, and it was an overcast day, so we don't know what we hit. Had no idea what we hit. I know we had just gotten back from that first mission, and then they called us back that night and said, "This is it. It's D-Day." So I knew before a lot of Americans did that we were going to.
And then how often did you find yourself flying on a mission on the 24th?
Well, it depended on the weather more than anything else. Sometime we'd go 2 or 3 weeks without a flight, and I didn't. You know, it's a funny thing. It was flying every day. It didn't bother me. But after I'd been off for 2 or 3 weeks, I wasn't too anxious to get in that plane and go again. But we did it, and a lot of times we just sitting days and days. You know, that time of year in England, the weather is terrible. We flew one mission. We knew we were not going to be able to land when we came back because the field was stocked in good. And we came back. We went over to Land's End and landed over there and stayed 2 or 3 days before we could get back to our base. That's how bad it was.
Tell me about some of those missions that you were on. What stands out in your mind is among the most memorable?
Well, the long missions were the ones that were when we were 7 or 8 hours long, and you, well, you went to Air Corps.
I was in the Navy.
In the Navy. Well, you get on the bomb run, mister, you don't veer from it. You know, once you've settled on the bomb run, you're going to stay there no matter what's out in front of you. You're going to stay on it, and you're going to drop your bombs on the target. And that's the thing that was most frightening. The flak was just like black clouds out in front of us. I mean, you see this plane, and you just over here, you'll see a plane burst into flames, and no parachutes. We lost a lot of planes, but
Was your plane hit at any time?
hit.
Hit by
Oh yeah, we had. Well, we bailed out over England once. A
What
plane.
mission was that?
That was. I don't know where we had been that day, but it was probably pretty much in the middle of our tour of duty, and well, that article that I showed you says it didn't count the holes, but the engineer did count up to 100 holes in the bomb bay alone, and so it was pretty well shot up. The landing gear would not lock in position. That's the reason we had to bail out.
And when you hit the ground, where were you?
Not far from the base. I mean, we had gotten back to our base and started to land, and the landing gear had been shot up, and it just would not. I think it went down, but it wouldn't lock in position. They raised it again, and then they tried to crank it down, and it just wouldn't work. And the tower just says, told the pilot to get everybody out of there, and we've all bailed out and headed the plane out over the North Sea. And it wound up, as we found out many years later, I mean, almost 50 years later, that it landed in a cow pasture in Holland and killed 15 cows. But it landed very well. I mean, as it described it in this article, it didn't bury in the ground at all. It just landed, and it was apparently pretty much intact, which is a miracle.
Whatever happened to the plane? Do you know?
I don't know what they did, what the people in Holland did with it, what the Dutch did with it. I have no idea. I didn't know about this until about 2 or 3 years ago, I guess, 3 or 4 years ago, maybe.
How did you happen to find out about it so many years later?
Well, there is a lady in Seething, and a group of people that have followed the men who were in Seething in the military from America. Seething is about 9 miles from Norwich, near the Wash. You know that big. You know where the Wash is, but anybody on listening to this may not know. But what did you ask me? I'm sorry.
Yeah. What was the?
How did he find out?
Yeah. How did you find out?
Oh yeah.
About this so many years later?
Okay. This lady, they've done. I'll come back to that in a minute. I'll just tell you what this lady in Seething either wrote me or called me. I can't recall which, and asked me if I knew the number of our plane. I didn't know it, but I got it and gave it to her, and then she later told me that they found it, and that's the article that you've seen there. The people in Seething they've restored the tower. They have an organization of people over there that's still just very much enthralled with World War II and the American people. And I've been back and visited with her, and she's a very fine person. Pat Everson is her name.
On one of those missions, your plane was shot down.
I was shot down on my last mission on the 16th of January, 1945.
Where were you?
And we were, our target that day was Ruhland, R-U-H-L-A-N-D, Germany, not far from Dresden. We were all 4 engines went out, and the plane was falling. Fortunately, it was not tumbling. You realize if it had been tumbling, we never would have gotten out of it. But it was coming down pretty fast, but it mushes pretty good. And I don't know, the pilot gave the order to bail out, and it was my last mission, and I didn't want to get off that plane. I was very much interested in staying on there, and I believe I was the last one to leave. I was not going to, if those engines caught up, I was going to be on that plane and get back.
How many are
But
on the crew?
I think we had 11, either 11 or 12. This was not my regular crew. I had flown 29 missions with my regular crew, and I was sick, had a head cold, and they said you ought not to fly, so I didn't. So I was flying with this crew to get my last mission in. They were going to they were going to fly lead crew that day, and we'd been flying lead crew and had made it so far. So I thought, well, this is a good plane to be on. Of course, they didn't tell me it was their 13th mission either, but and we got shot down over Germany.
Did
and
everybody make it off?
yeah, all of them did. We thought we didn't know about the engineer. Didn't hear from him. And he was not in the prison camp with the rest of us. But we found out later that he did get back. We went through Camp Lucky Strike in Le Havre, and he had signed a register, so we knew he got back too.
Where did you actually land on your by parachute then?
Well, it was somewhere in the Ruland area. I have no idea. I haven't been back to to track it down, but I was I know it was very, very close to Dresden, because it was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I crawled under a ledge up in these hills, and I stayed there until it got well, after the soldiers, they knew the plane had crashed, you know, and the Germans did. And my main concern was the Hitler Youth Group. I was afraid if they saw me, they'd kill me. So when I finally got down out of my tree, I hung up in the tree, and I got on this rock. I stayed there for a while, and the soldiers went on, and I walked down the road a little ways. There was a little, it wasn't exactly a barn, but it was a little house with straw in there, and I got in there and stayed in there till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And I got up and started walking down the road into this little town. I have no idea what community it was. It was very small.
Did you bump into any of your crew? Any of your crew?
Later I did, but two men came along, and we were going to work, had little lunch pails, and I debated, now should I grab one of those lunch pails and run, or should I let them take me in? And of course I still had on my flying gear. They knew I was an American, and they knew, but they took me right in, turned me over to the military, for which I was thankful. And from there, right into Dresden, which was just a short distance away.
Is that where they imprisoned you, in Dresden?
Yes. Let's see, I guess I was just there. Well, I was just there for about 2 or 3 days, and then they sent us to Frankfurt. But this is what I was going to tell you about Dresden and what the Holocaust that took place later. We had gotten out. Well, first my thought was, here's the 3rd largest city in Germany, hadn't been touched. We've been getting a lot of propaganda from our government about how we're destroying Germany, and I was worried about that. But after we left there, within 24 to 48 hours, I'm sure, the Americans and the British hit it, one at night, one in the daytime, and just destroyed Dresden. So, and then I went from Dresden to I believe it was Frankfurt, where I was interned, and they put us.
Were there other airmen in the prison camp?
Oh, most of my crew was there.
They were
Oh
all
yeah, and I had done a foolish thing. I left without my dog tag, and they made a lot of noise about that. And they had asked me questions, and I wouldn't answer them except my name, rank, and serial number. I was determined that that's what I was supposed to do, and I was going to do it, and I did it. But they said, well, we can't identify you as a member of this crew, and thus in the morning you'll hear 3 telling some of my buddies, you know, where I could hear it. In the morning you'll hear 3 shots and he'll be dead. And that didn't exactly make me feel good, but anyhow, after they kept me in solitary for 24 hours. And I don't want to be in solitary for 30 days. That was a terrible experience. Just 24 hours is long enough in solitary. Then we went from there. We were 30 days in a prison camp in Frankfurt. We went from Frankfurt to Nuremberg, and we were there about 30 days. And we finally.
What was the prison like inside? Were you all in one big room or an individual?
No, they had barracks. We had beds, double-decker bunks, and straw mattresses. And I complained to the guards one day that my mattress had fleas in it. They examined it and said, "Yes, you're sure right. You do have fleas. Burn it." And I did. I burned it, and I slept on the springs from then on.
What was the prison food like?
Well, you're talking about prison food or the food we had in prison?
The food you had in prison.
Okay. Well, the Germans gave us very little. They had bean soup with weevils floating in. You know what weevils are? Okay. And that was the protein we got. But and every now and then they'd give us a piece of rotten cheese, and every night a slice of that old black bread made out of sawdust. And that was about it. But the Red Cross fed us. We got parcels from the Red Cross.
And they allowed the Red Cross back?
Oh yeah, well they enjoyed them themselves. They needed food, but the Germans didn't have any food to give us. That was the whole truth. At that point, see, the war was ended just a few months later, but they didn't have any food to give us, and the parcels. A parcel was supposed to last one man 7 days, but in order to prevent us from hoarding food, to try to escape, they had to punch holes in it and give one parcel to 7 men. And so we had to divide a parcel between 7 people. And then from Nuremberg we marched then from Nuremberg down to Moosburg, near the Bavarian border. Probably 150 kilometers. That'd be a little over 100 miles, I guess. But it took us 2 weeks to do it. And
did you just sleep out on the ground?
I slept out, except one of the first nights we slept at a dairy, and the next morning the farmers got up to milk the cows, and they were all dry. We never did figure out why. You didn't hear that, did you?
I heard that. It was good, wasn't it?
And they had a bakery there, and they'd bake these great, big, tremendous loaves of bread. And we could see that bread being baked, and there was we got a pitchfork, and we'd reach, the glass was broken for some reason, I don't know why, hadn't been repaired. We'd just reach in there and get one of those loaves of bread. We helped ourselves. They said, "Well, this is the last time you'll stop at a farm." So, and they were right. We slept in the woods from then on, or wherever we could. But
did your family back here in Atlanta know that you had been taken prisoner?
not right away. I mean, not immediately. This letter that I brought with me today was the first they knew about. Well, no. I had written a letter that they'd gotten, but not long before I got home, really. But so they didn't know. My brother, went down in the Pacific. He and I were missing at the same time.
So how long?
It was pretty tough on my mother and father.
How long did your family know that you were just called a MIA, missing in action? Was it several months?
Well, it couldn't have been several months because I was really a prisoner from January to April 29th. That's about 8 days before the war ended, but so it was not that long a period. But it was maybe a month before they knew it. I'm just guessing. I hope that's an educated guess. But
did you hear? Were you able to receive anything other than the Red Cross packages during your imprisonment?
Well, I don't know where I'd have gotten it from. because they certainly didn't let any. My family didn't send anything. I don't think they knew had enough knowledge about where I was, or there's no way they could have communicated with me. I don't believe. It's my best recollection of that.
So what prison were you in when the war actually ended?
I was in Mooseburg. We had 25,000 prisoners at Mooseburg, and they were soldiers from every country in the world. A lot of Persians, Egyptians, Indians, English, American, all. Well, no, they had them in separate compounds. But the Russians had a compound right next to ours, and Russia, of course, was not a member of the Geneva Convention, and they got no food except dehydrated sauerkraut. They'd bring these great big GI cans and roll them in there, and those guys would fight over that stuff like it was peaches and cream.
So how were you liberated from that prison camp?
General Patton, he had been moving pretty rapidly toward Mooseburg, and on April 29th, early that morning, we could hear the tanks in the distance, and a couple of planes flew over and did a barrel roll, and about that time all hell broke out, and Patton and his Third Army came through there. They said they'd met more resistance there than they had anywhere, and they were out in Mooseburg and out of it within 2 hours. And of course, all the guards at the prison camp had departed.
Of the 25,000 prisoners, about how many of those were Americans?
I'm going to guess 10 to 15,000 probably.
And what happened right after Patton came through and liberated the camp?
Well, I went into Mooseburg. And we went through some of the homes and just rambling around, And there was a brewery there, and the Russians set it on fire. And that thing, it was an inferno. And those Russians would go in the door, out the door in that fire. I don't know how many of them got burned to death in that thing, but they was doing it. They were crazy.
What were your parents doing back here in Atlanta during those days?
Well, I didn't ask them. but I know I'm not really sure what my father was doing at that time. He had been in the insurance business, but he lost his job in the Depression, and I don't know. I'm not really. I just can't remember what he was doing. He didn't have.
Where your parents lived?
We lived in Atlanta.
Address?
It was in South Atlanta, and Lakewood. Lakewood, if you know that area at all? Well, it was a very poor neighborhood. And
so after your visit to Mooseburg, did you continue to stay there at the prison camp, or were you immediately removed from there?
we stayed there a few days. They brought food to us. I remember the first time I saw white loaf bread again. I tell you, it looked like sponge cake.
Had you lost much weight in those months?
I had, yes, a good bit, yeah. I'd grown a handlebar mustache, though.
During all this period of time, were you wounded at any one time?
The only injury I had was in that flight the day we bailed out over Germany. I had a little piece of flak hit me in the forehead, and blood trickled down. I never received any medical treatment, but and it was, I guess, as far as I know, it's still there. The only other person that had an injury, the tail gunner, had a sliver of flak right into his eyeball, and it looked very ominous. But he went to the hospital. They just pulled it out, and he never had a bit of trouble.
He retained his
Oh, no problem at all. His eyes were just as good as they ever been.
So when you left the prison camp then, were you brought back to the States?
I went to Camp Lucky Strike in Le Havre, and I don't remember now what was wrong with me, but I was ill, and they put me in the hospital for 2 or 3 days. I tried to sleep on a bed. That was one of the big problems, and I finally had to get on the floor to go to sleep. That's the truth. That's the true story. And then we got on a ship, the Windhoek. It was a German transport converted to a cruise ship, I guess, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. You're a Navy man. You know more about that.
What port was that?
In Le Havre, and then we went across to England, to I guess it was probably Southampton, and from there to New Jersey. Took us about 10 days to cross, as I recall it. That was in June. I think we landed in the States June 13th. I believe we left on the 1st.
And what was the date that you first arrived in England the previous year? You remember?
I beg your pardon?
When you arrived in England with your bombing group.
Oh, yes, that was it was late April. It was probably, I'd say the 28th, 29th of April, because the reason I remember that, my birthday was April 21st, and we were in, I think it was either Dakar or Marrakesh in Africa.
So you were away a little over a year from the time you left until you got back.
Right,
to
yeah.
England. During all that period of time, do you recall any one experience that was the most memorable in your mind?
Well, I guess this is not exactly one thing, but the one thing we did most of the time in prison camp was to make up menus of food we were going to have when we got home. We were going to have one big blowout in New York. Of course, it didn't materialize, and we probably didn't think it would anyhow, but we did. And another thing I thought was of interest at any rate, we had one fellow who taught German. I believe it was at the University of Wisconsin, but I'm not sure. He was a prisoner with us, and he held a class in German, and I learned a lot of German from him. I don't know. If I'd known you weren't going to ask me that question, I'd have thought about it a little more. But
apart from the youngest brother who was an aviator and was lost in the Pacific, where were your other brothers stationed, and what did they do?
Well, the brother just older than I was in the Coast Guard, and he was on the Senegal cutter, Coast Guard cutter, and he was up in he sailed out of a lot of ports along the East Coast, but I know he was in Norfolk and probably in Rhode Island, Boston area. It seems to me he was up in there, and his tour carried him up into the North Atlantic, and this was before the war too. They were fighting German U-boats before the war, before America got in the war. And the two older brothers, they were in the Pacific. I was talking to my youngest brother the other day, and he told me where George was stationed, but I don't remember. In the Pacific. They were in the Seabees, and then the youngest brother in the service.
Did any of you make a career in the military?
No. I thought Ted, who was in the Coast Guard, I thought he might, but because he had been in several years before the war started, and but he finally decided to get out.
Where were you finally mustered out of service?
Miami, Florida. When I got back to the States, I had 3 months temporary duty at home, which was very nice.
You mean here in Atlanta?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, I came home and stayed 3 months. The truth is, they were trying to get they had so many getting out at the same time, you know. They didn't want me to go around and wait 3 months, I'm sure. So I was home for 3 months, and to keep up my flying time, for flying pay, you know, I flew up to Boston during that period, and walking down the street in the Boston Common, and walked right into Frank Lydon, who was a co-pilot on my plane.
What a coincidence.
Yeah. So
Is Frank, is he still living today?
Frank is still living. He lives on Long Island. The one's living now, Jack Wirtz, he's was the bombardier and lives in Utah. I can't think of the name of the town, doesn't matter. And Pete Lewis, the radio operator, lives in Connecticut, I believe. He's either Connecticut or, yeah, I guess I'm gonna say Connecticut. Anyhow, he's up that area. And
So you were finally mustered out after 3 months in Atlanta.
yes.
What did you do then?
When I got after 3 months in Atlanta, I went down and stayed in Miami 2 weeks, and during that period we had a hurricane. That was quite an experience. But I was already registered to enter the University of Georgia, and I came home on a Saturday, I guess, and Sunday I was in school at the University of Georgia.
GI Bill?
GI Bill.
What year was that? Was it 40?
In 1945, yeah. And with a credit I had, that 10 hours at Georgia State helped me. And with 1 year, I took an exam and they gave me 1 year of undergraduate work. And I spent 1 year, they let me get into law school after 2 years. And so I went 36 months straight through. I didn't stop, bang. And I finished law school in 8 quarters at the University of Georgia. And then I practiced for 36 years
Here in Atlanta.
in Atlanta.
Tell us about your family.
I have 2 children. Kirk is the oldest. He'll be 53 in December. And he teaches art at the Henry Ford Community College in Dearborn, Michigan. My daughter has a master's degree in computer science, and she's with ING, and doing very well. Has no children. Kirk has 2 boys. Lois has no children. She has 2 cats.
Did you join a veterans organization of any kind once you got out?
Well, we had a POW group for a while, but it sort of played out, and I guess I'm not, I never went to American Legion, Veterans of Foreign Wars, or any of those. I guess the answer is no.
Are you still in touch with any of your Air Force buddies?
Oh yeah, we've had reunions, but I think we've had our last one because we lost the fellow that got the flak in his eye. He died this year, and that left only 4, I think, of us. And then the other crew, Peterson has Alzheimer's disease, and only 4 or 5 of us left in that group. And so we're not meeting anymore. But we had a lot of good reunions, had a lot of fun together.
Did you, during your days in the Air Force in Europe, or flying out of England, did you keep a journal or a diary?
I did not, and I regret to say Frank Lydon did, and he has, probably have a copy of it at home, but I didn't do that. I wish I had, but that's water over the dam.
Well, have you since written anything about your experiences that your children have? Or?
No, I'm seriously considering. I hope you're going to give me a copy of this. Seriously considering. My daughter gave me a book to write in, and I think I've written about 2 paragraphs, but I better start writing pretty soon because at 82, we don't know how long we're going to be around to have.
What what, have your children quizzed you at all about your time in the war, particularly?
Not really, not much, no. I don't,
What other information would you like to share with us that we haven't yet talked about?
well, I had something on my mind a minute ago, but it went as fast as it came. Oh, me. Well, you might be interested in this. I may or may not. I finally remembered what it was. Since I practiced law and retired, I decided it ought to be something more that I could do with the talent, if I had any. So I go out to the VA. For 5 years I've been doing this at the VA hospital, doing pro bono work for veterans.
The one on Claremont?
Yeah, on Claremont, yes. I'm slowing down a little bit though now because I'm 82 and sometimes I think I'm not competent to give advice to anybody.
What type of law were you?
I was a trial lawyer and defended anything that was a tort, T-O-R-T, tort. You know, I'm sure you know what a tort is. But I represented a lot of insurance companies, and they, of course, hired our firm to defend their insureds, automobile accidents, slip and fall cases in the grocery stores.
What was the name of your law firm?
It was Carter Ansley Smith and McLendon when I retired. I was a senior partner in the firm at that time.
Where was your office?
In the First National Bank Tower, downtown, right at 5 Points. We were on the 41st floor.
As you look back upon it, Mr. McLendon, have your service experiences in any way, from your perspective now, affected your outlook on life, in any measure?
Well, no, I think I'm the same person I was. I know a lot of people who studied law and thought they were so high and mighty and great people, you know. But I'm just like I was. I don't put on any airs. And I don't think well, I'm sure the experience. I had nightmares. I've been back in prison camps probably 500 times since that occasion, you know. And it was never the same war, but I wind up in a prison camp. But that doesn't happen so much anymore. But,
the older you get, the less that disturbs you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it probably made a better man out of me. I don't know.
How many brothers survive now?
2 brothers and 1 sister.
Do they live in Atlanta?
No, well, I have a brother in Atlanta and a brother in Texas and a sister in Texas. My dad always enjoyed telling people he had 6 boys and each one had a sister.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to add to what you've shared with us?
No, but I'm sure I'll think of something. When I was practicing law, I had a case once that it just bothered me. There was an issue there that I could not find an answer to. I worried about it all night. I couldn't sleep. I had a pad by the bed just in case it came to me. But I went to court that day and I stood on my feet, and all of a sudden it hit me. And I said, I have arrived. When I can think faster on my seat than I can on my feet, I've arrived. Oh, so that's, I guess, that's my life story. Gee, it's not important, is it?
No,
Not much to it, is it?
Could I ask you specifically?
Absolutely.
My name is Lillian Gansett.
Yes, Lillian.
What do you remember about Atlanta, just prior to enlisting?
Just prior to
What was
enlisting.
life like in Atlanta?
Well-
You said you went through the Depression in Atlanta, and
Yeah.
then wanted to make something better. What what were you doing in Atlanta? What was Atlanta like at that time?
Well,
Where did you
I
go
went,
to high school?
okay,
What were some of
okay, I
those
finished
activities?
high school in 1938. Probably 1939, I went to work in a dress factory in a shipping department, making 25 cents an hour.
All right, what
Okay.
high school did you graduate
I went to
from?
Fulton High School, right where
High
the,
school.
the first stadium they built
Mhm.
is right on top, was right on top of 345 Washington Street where I went to high school.
All right, and what was the name of the factory you worked in?
It was a Majestic
And where
Manufacturing Company.
Where was that?
It was on Marietta Street.
Mhm. And what did
Oh,
you
wait,
do?
yes. It was either Marietta or Lucky Street, I can't remember
All
now.
right, and tell us what your day was like at work.
Oh, well, I packed dresses in boxes and shipped them.
What kind of dresses? What did they look like?
Oh, well, they were reasonably priced. I mean, they were not fancy dresses. They didn't, they probably cost at that time $2 or $3, I guess. Then I was there for about a year, and then I went to work at Fulton Supply Company as an office boy, and I was there for about a year. And I remember one of the salesmen. I'd go in the morning and open the switchboard, and you know, about things that made a difference in my life. And the salesmen come in, they'd gather around the switchboard talking and offering opinions about this, that, or the other. And one day I dared offer an opinion. And Mr. Coffey, one of the salesmen, said, "What the hell do you know you're?" And that was one thing. I thought, well, one of these days I'm going to be bigger and better than he is. And I'm damn sure I was.
You were a partner in Carter Anderson.
And then I went to work at the Atlanta General Depot before I went registered to go in the military. And I was a clerk typist. And I guess just to give you some idea about what I did, everything I did in that year I could have done in a month if I'd been left to my own devices. It's terrible, the waste, you know, but we had very little to do. I mean, it was, but anyhow, and then I went into service.
When you enlisted, where did you go?
First place I went was Nashville, Tennessee.
I'm sorry. The day you decided to enlist, was the enlistment office in Atlanta?
Well, I'm sure it was. I don't remember it, but I mean, I had. Well, I probably had some forms to fill out because I wanted to. But where I got them, I'm not even certain. But I had to fill out forms, I'm sure, to go into the Air Corps as a cadet. So I was a cadet when I went in, and but I don't remember what.
Do you remember how your parents felt about all the boys going into the military? Was there conversations at dinner as your older brothers went in?
Well, my older brothers, I was the first one to go in, I think.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, after Ted in the Coast Guard. He was, of course, he'd been in a long time. And I was the first one then. And then I think the youngest one was in the Naval Air Corps. And then the two older ones went in later. Now, what was your question?
Well, what did your sister do while you all were in the service? What was she doing?
She worked for Charlie Brown Manufacturing Company. You remember Charlie Brown? Did you ever know he ran for mayor, but he was Fulton County Commissioner, and he owned Brown Manufacturing Company. They had made brooms and mops, and she was the secretary.
The 3 months when you came back and you sort of served your last 3 months at home in Atlanta, you said sometimes to keep up the flying you went back and forth to Boston.
I just went that one time.
All right.
Yeah.
What was Atlanta like? Do you remember anything happening in Atlanta during that time? What'd you do for fun? Did you go to the movies?
Well,
Did you?
I'm sure I was dating somebody. I hope I was. And we'd go to movies. We'd go to the drive-in. What is it? The Varsity. The Varsity. Go to movies and picnics.
Where did you meet your wife?
Former friend introduced us.
That was after the war.
Did you take it to the door?
Oh, no. Well, my wife is a lawyer as well, and she was closing real estate loans for her law firm at Fulton Federal Savings and Loan Association. And this couple, one guy, he and I have been friends since 1934. We went through high school together. He and his wife, well, his wife met my wife at Fulton Federal, and she introduced us.
What's your wife's name?
Jacqueline, Jacqueline.
What was her maiden name?
Kirkland.
What year were you married?
December 31st, 1949, and I'll tell you, I'll never get married on Christmas, New Year's Eve again. It's the last time I'll do that.
What was so bad about getting married on New Year's Eve?
Nothing. That's just. Well, it was. No, it was fine. We drove down to Biloxi on a wedding trip and broke down in Newnan, Georgia. Oh me.
I think that's
My name's Hap Chandler, and Mac, I think we were about the first two back to University of Georgia after the
Yeah,
war.
right. Yeah, that's right.
We were in the same dormitory.
Mm-hmm.
Which dorm?
Now I don't remember.
Millage Hall.
It was right there behind the stadium.
Yeah, Millage Hall.
Millage
Hall.
Was it Millage?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Did you both go back to the University of Georgia the same year?
Yeah, same year,
Same year.
same time.
Well, you
Tom
and
Reed came out and shook our hand.
what did you? You were in business school, or?
I was in business school.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, Morris Mason used to sit right behind me.
He did. Morris Bass is an Atlanta attorney,
Yeah.
and
Well, Mr. McLendon, we want to thank you very much for coming today and sharing.
oh, it was my pleasure.
experiences
Thank you for
and
inviting me.
photos of your family.
You made me remember things I haven't thought of in a long time.
We
I
appreciate
wish I'd done more better, but
If you got time for one more little postscript. The first time I read it back, we started telling war stories. It turned out I too was on this ruling mission, and I figured out that I saw him shot down. I didn't see him bail out, but I saw him. Real coincidence.
you should have picked me up. That's what you should have.